When our mom passed a couple of years ago at age 94, it was noted that she was the last living sibling of a large family. 2 years before that, my Uncle Roger passed. He was the last surviving sibling on my father's side. I'm dedicating this episode to them. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 14, Chapter 11.
Last surviving member.
Oh, also, I should point out that this will be a boomer episode. Okay, boomer? Jethro Bodine is still with us. Of course, I mean actor Max Baer Jr., who will be 87 soon. He is the last surviving member of the cast of the TV series The Beverly Hillbillies. Max Baer Jr. played cousin Jethro Bodine. Now, I can't underemphasize the importance of properly understanding ancestral history. So let me point out that it was Jed Clampett who had the millions. One day he was out shooting at some food, went out through the ground, came a bubbling crude. Texas tea. Oil, that is. You may have wondered, as I have, why didn't Jed and his kin just stay in the Ozarks and use all that money to reinvigorate the local economy? Hard to say. I don't know. Maybe they were Republicans. Also, we don't actually know how charitable Jed was. How many checks he wrote, how many people he helped out before he moved to Beverly. Nevertheless, the kinfolk said California is a place you ought to be. Jed was a widower, single father of his daughter Ellie Mae. Granny was his mother-in-law, and Jethro was the only one who knew how to drive. So he drove them across country. Why didn't they just fly or take a bus? I have no idea. Because of his driving skills, Jethro came along. And then he stayed to go to school, and also to become a sophisticated playboy. Jethro's mother was Cousin Pearl, played by actress Bea Benaderet. And although Petticoat Junction was in the Beverly Hills universe, Benaderet was also Kate Bradley, who owned the Shady Rest Hotel and ran it with the lazy but lovable Uncle Joe. Green Acres was a spin-off of Petticoat Junction, although the Clampetts and the Bodines did not cross over with Oliva and Lisa Douglas. Sam Drucker, though, was the only one who had a store in all three series. Sam Drucker is like an early Sam Walton, I guess. So back to our hero, Jethro. Max Baer Jr. would also play his own twin sister, Jethrine, on the Beverly Hillbillies. Remember this? It was Max Baer Jr. in drag. But instead of him doing some sort of falsetto voice, they dubbed in an actual female actress saying his lines. It was strange, to say the least. If you're watching this podcast on my YouTube channel, enjoy the visual of Jethro and Jethrine. Max Baer Jr. was the son of heavyweight boxing champion Max Baer, and after the Hillbillies, couldn't find a lot of acting work because of typecasting. Obviously, he really nailed the nuances of Jethro and Jethrine. Sorry, Max, we can't picture you as anyone else. So Max Baer Jr. went on to produce and direct movies like Ode to Billy Joe and The Macon County Line. Macon County Line, released in 1974. It was made for about $200,000 and earned over $30 million. A Hollywood box office record that stood for 25 years until The Blair Witch Project. Way to go, Jethro. Max Baer Jr. remained close friends with Buddy Ebsen after the series ended, and although Ebsen lived to be 95, he passed in 2003. It was the passing of actress Donna Douglas in 2015 that made Max Baer Jr. the last living member of the Beverly Hillbillies. Speaking of Hicks and Yokels, Ron Howard is the last surviving member of the original Andy Griffith Show. Opie lives. Not in Mayberry, but he lives. The last surviving member of the Leave It to Beaver show is the Beaver, actor Jerry Mathers. He's in his 70s, generally tends to embrace his iconic role in the history of television, Although there was a very popular urban legend in the 70s and early 80s that the kid who played Beaver on TV was killed in Vietnam. In his late teens and early 20s, Mathers served a few years in the California Air National Guard, but he never went to Vietnam. It was just one of those pre-internet rumors that seemed very convenient to spread in order to emphasize the brutality of war. Oh man, the Beaver was killed in Vietnam. We got to get out of there. But last surviving member, main cast. Actually, the actor who played Beaver's friend Larry is still with us. And I know that Wally's friend Lumpy Rutherford looks like he went on to become American politician Chris Christie, but it's not true. Again, if you're with me on YouTube, enjoy the visual. Actor Frank Bank was Lumpy. He passed in 2013. Eddie Haskell, Ken Osmond, passed in 2020. Hey, trivia, actor Harry Shearer on SNL, The Simpsons, Spinal Tap, was a child actor who was offered the role of Eddie Haskell. Turned it down. The Beeves' older brother Wally, Tony Dow, passed in 2022. The mom, June, Barbara Billingsley, lived to be 94. She passed in 2010. Jerry Mathers, Leave It to Beaver, last surviving member. Last surviving member of Gilligan's Island, Ginger Grant, actress Tina Louise, who turned 90 earlier this year. She achieved the status after Marianne, actress Dawn Wells, passed in 2020. Bob Denver, Gilligan, passed in 2005. Barbara Feldon turned 91 recently. Agent, 99, is the last surviving member of the TV show Get Smart. Barbara Eden is 93. She is the last surviving member of I Dream of Jeannie. She was Jeannie. Obviously also has the magical powers of longevity. Larry Hagman passed in 2012. I Dream of Jeannie was certainly like Bewitched. Tony Nelson, Darren Stevens, both suddenly have this mystical access to unlimited magical power available to them from a beautiful woman who loves them and would do anything they say. But both oddly forbid the arbitrary use of the magic. They want to live, quote, normal lives. Weren't we all just yelling at the TV? Do it! Do it! Use the magic! More power and money, take it! What the hell's the matter with you? William Shatner is 93, and people often think that he is the last surviving member of the original Star Trek TV series. However, Walter Koenig and George Takei, Chekhov and Sulu, respectively, are still with us. That is still enough of a crew to boldly go to Senior's Day at Shoppers Drug Mart. Shouldn't joke, actually. Shatner, at the age of 90, went to the edge of space on one of Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin flights. It was pretty good. We lost Leonard Nimoy in 2015, Uhura, Nichelle Nichols, just in 2022. Betty White passed on December 31st of 2021, about 3 weeks before her 100th birthday. Before she died, she was the last surviving member of not only the Golden Girls, but of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And speaking of that show, 2021 was a tough year for former cast members. Ed Asner, Cloris Leachman, Gavin MacLeod, and then Betty White, all passing over the course of 2021, all in their 90s. Robert Clary died about 2 years ago at age 96. As prisoner LeBeau, he was the last surviving member of Hogan's Heroes. If you remember, Clary was criticized for wearing a prisoner of war number carved into his arm. People said that added detail was in bad taste, as if the concept of the whole show was not. Clary would point out that the number was in fact real. Robert Clary was an SS prisoner at Buchenwald and an actual Holocaust survivor, long before he was a Hogan's Heroes survivor. Oh gee, which one do you think was more significant? Joyce Randolph just passed at the beginning of 2024. She would have been 100 last month. Randolph played Norton's wife, Trixie. She was the last surviving member of the Honeymooners. Lou Ferrigno is the last surviving member of the original Incredible Hulk TV series. The last surviving member of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, Doc Severinsen, still blowing in the wind at age 97. Heck, in 2021, Doc moved in with a new girlfriend. She's actually a professor emerita of trumpet from the University of Tennessee. Michael McKean is the last surviving member of Laverne and Shirley. Conrad Janis passed in 2022 at age 94. He played Mindy's father, leaving Pam Dauber as the last surviving member of the series Mork and Mindy. Todd Bridges is the last surviving member of Different Strokes. Remember that co-star Gary Coleman passed many years ago at age 42. And that's what I'm talking about, Willis. The original TV Addams Family. Last surviving member, well, one would think it would be Lisa Loring, the original child actress who played Wednesday. Well, no, she had a stroke and passed last year at age 64. It's actually the dad, Gomez, John Aston, last surviving member of the Addams Family. He's 94. Oh, and speaking of scary families, the Brady Bunch, the kids are all still around, but Mom and Dad and Alice, even Sam the Butcher, all gone to that big sitcom in the sky. I always had a private joke I told myself when I watched that show. It was that Sam the Butcher was not in the meat business at all, that was his nickname in the mob. Hilarious. They should have used that on the show. Last surviving member of the Dick Van Dyke Show? Dick Van Dyke. He's 98. After the passing of Suzanne Summers in 2023, Joyce DeWitt became the last surviving member of TV's Three's Company. We know, of course, the last surviving members of the Beatles are Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, although original drummer Pete Best is still kicking. Not kick drumming, but kicking. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are the surviving members of the original Rolling Stones, after losing drummer Charlie Watts in 2021. Although the original bass player Bill Wyman is still plucking, but he left the band way back in 1993. Can you imagine Wyman leaving in 1993? He's got to be thinking like, well, it's been 30 years. We had a good run. How much longer can this go on? I'm out. I don't know if I should count Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey of The Who as the last surviving members, but only because it seems like they've been the last surviving members for the bulk of their career. One day it'll be a Townsend hologram and Daltrey's head in a jar, and they'll still be touring as The Who. Don Henley is now the last surviving founding member of the Eagles, at least one who always remained an Eagle. Barry Gibb is the last surviving Bee Gee. Garth Hudson is the last surviving member of the band. That after Robbie Robertson passed in the summer of 2023. Johannes von Trapp, he's the last surviving member of the singing Von Trapp family, portrayed in the film The Sound of Music. The Hills are alive, and so is Johannes at 85. Mickey Dolenz is the last surviving member of the Monkees. One of my favorite movies of all time is Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. Cary Grant. The heroine of the film, Eva Marie Saint, turned 100 this year. She is the last surviving member of the cast of North by Northwest. Mind you, at 100, she is probably the last surviving member of a lot of movies, like On the Waterfront. Gary Watson is 96. He's the last surviving actor to star in silent films. When comedian Joey Bishop died in 2007 at age 89, he was the last surviving member of the infamous Rat Pack, the media-dubbed group of entertainers that included Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. When Jerry Lee Lewis passed in 2022, he was the last surviving member of the original first-ever inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Henry Kissinger died in November of 2023. He lived to be 100. Kissinger was the last surviving member of the Nixon administration cabinet. Reporters Woodward and Bernstein are still around. Cliff Hill is 92. He is the last surviving passenger of the JFK limo in Dallas. He was a Secret Service agent who shielded First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy and the wounded president as they sped to the hospital. The Apollo 11 mission was the first to land and walk on the moon. Buzz Aldrin is 94 and the last surviving member of that mission. I thought maybe the surviving members of the Toronto Maple Leafs who last won a Stanley Cup would be a small number, less than 12. It's not, it's 12. It was 13 until Ron Ellis died earlier this year. All these last surviving members with their name engraved on Lord Stanley's mug are well into their 80s. Iris Cummings is 103, once a competitive swimmer. She is the last surviving athletic participant in the 1936 Summer Olympics. Of the over 1 million Canadians who left home to fight in World War II, the last surviving members of that force number just over 39,000. Average age, 94. There are approximately 234,000 known survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the 80th anniversary of which will be next summer. The 2024 Nobel Peace Prize was recently awarded to a group called Nihon Hidankyo, a Japanese-based organization who advocates for the elimination of nuclear weapons. About 160 people were thought to be survivors of both bombings. Most well known among them was a man named Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He is thought to be one of the last known survivors of both attacks. As a young naval engineer, he was in Hiroshima on business. He was just about to leave, actually, to get home when the first bomb was dropped August 6, 1945. And even though he was near the epicenter, he miraculously survived and managed his way through the devastation to get home to Nagasaki, only to witness the second atomic bomb drop on August 9th. Yamaguchi also became an anti-nuke spokesperson. He passed in 2010 at age 93. The last surviving member of the Titanic voyage passed in 2009. Melvina Dean was only 2 months old at the time of the tragedy. She lived to be 97.
Andrea Doria collided with a Stockholm in dense fog 12 miles off the coast of Nantucket. 51 people died.
51 people? That's it? That's no tragedy. How many people do you lose on a normal cruise? 30, 40?
Are you the last surviving member of anything? A team, a group, a class, a family unit? I'm not. At least I'm pretty sure I'm not. It would be bittersweet to be one of those last survivors. I guess sweet because you made it, but bitter because everyone else is gone. It's a milestone to be sure, and I've tried to note at least a few of them here in this episode. When Betty White passed at age 99, there were already plans for her 100th birthday celebration. People said that's what cursed her. Yeah, like we have that kind of power. If planning a birthday celebration for someone would actually cause their death, I can think of a few people that I wouldn't mind buying a cake for. But at the time I thought, gee, well, there's got to be lots of other celebrities that are 90 and older. So I made a list. I've kept it up for almost 3 years now. And there are hundreds, some of which I mentioned in this podcast. Speaking of survivors, do you know they still make the show Survivor? As a matter of fact, host Jeff Probst recently announced Survivor 50 will be made up of return castaways. 50 seasons of Survivor. Wow. I mean, I saw the first season and I kind of lost interest. So we can end on this note. There are around 700 surviving members of the TV show Survivor.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.